This is Dubai Eye 103.8.
From sizzling reads to well-loved classics, delve between the covers with Helen Farmer.
It's Georgia Tolley here, standing in for Helen for the next couple of days. We are discussing literature on the programme, specifically kids' books. Because in this age of the screen, how can we encourage a love of literature in our children? And why is it so important? What are actually the benefits of reading for children? I have a fantastic panel of guests in the studio. We are packed here. We have Geneva Jones from Clarion School, Dubai. We have the Librarian of the Year, Mary Rose Grieve, and we have Malar Balaji from Booktopia. They are the budget book company who also organise reading sessions around Dubai. Thank you for joining us, all of you. I'm going to put your microphones up now so you can actually be heard. Mary Rose, as School Librarian of the Year, I just love that we have that, thanks to the Emirates Airline Festival of Literature. Obviously your whole focus is books and getting children to read. How do we encourage that love of literature in the children? Because we've established it's so lovely to do it with them, but how do you get children who are sort of a bit bouncy, maybe finding it hard to focus, to actually sit down and embrace that love?
Yeah, well, I think that's a very good question. There are lots of ways to do it, but I think the most important thing for us is to model it and for them to see us reading, for them to see their parents and their teachers reading all the time. And when they see us doing it, they copy us. And it's the same with everything. They model what they see. So if they see us reading, they will go home and read as well. They will pick up a book. And if there are lots of people around them always reading, they too will join in. I mean, it's also very important to show them lots of different things. There are so many different books, and you don't have to sit down and read a novel. There are so many brilliant graphic novels for boys who are reluctant readers, who don't really want to sit down with a big book because it feels so daunting. But there are some brilliant graphic novels coming out now. Lots of magazines, lots of cartoons, lots of comics. All of those things, and poetry, like you said, opening all of those doors and giving them lots and lots of choice gets them, something will hook them in. I'm a huge, passionate fan of picture books for children of all ages and adults, actually. I think it's such a brilliant way to get children engaged by looking at pictures, particularly now when we're so surrounded by image all the time on iPads and screens. That actually it's a lovely way to get in when you're looking at some of these new picture books that are coming out that are so beautifully produced with amazing illustrations. It's a great way to hook children in, to be able to see the interplay between word and picture and language. So I think it's lots of things, but I do think the most important thing is for the adults around them to be modelling good reading habits. It's all very well sitting with your children and reading books for them, but if they don't see you reading yourself for pleasure, it's not going to be something that becomes second nature to them.
Do you know that's so difficult, because how many of us read books on our phones or on our tablets now, and they don't know that you're reading a book. You could just be doing WhatsApp or,
Yeah. I think it is difficult. I mean, I'm trying to encourage, we have a teachers' reading group at school where the teachers are reading children's literature and learning and rereading their old favourites, but also reading lots of new children's literature. And actually, children's books are really good. They're really good for grown-ups to read. And I think just picking up one of those books, you don't need to have... I mean, I don't have a Kindle, actually. I just keep buying books from bookshops or going to the library and bringing books home.
Yeah, I like that.
And that feeling of having a physical book in your hand is just, there's nothing else like it.
And it's a record, because I did actually go through a phase when I was having my babies of reading on my phone, because when you're breastfeeding, it's just easier just to hold something small in the dark, lonely hours. Maybe that was just me. And so I don't have a record. I mean, I hardly remember the books because, of course, I was, out of it. But I have no record of those books I read because they were sort of just on my phone and they'd disappeared into the ether slightly.
Yes, and seeing it, so much of reading is about your response to it and how you feel when you read something. And those, we can spend ages teaching children the skill of reading, but it's what you feel when you read the book that is the important thing. That's something you can't teach, but you can talk about a lot. And I think when you see, it's like you say, it's a sort of memory. You go, oh, look, gosh, I remember that book. I remember how I felt when I read that, or where I was when I read it. And that the physicalness of it brings all those memories back, the smell and the touch of it and the look of it.
Now, this is all music to Malar's ears.
Absolutely.
Because Malar is from Booktopia, who sell books.
Yes.
And the real solid ones you touch. That must make you feel good to hear that you've got School Librarian of the Year saying, buy the book.
I'm thrilled. I'm on top of the world.
Mary Rose, where did your love of reading start?
I don't know when it started, but it was all I did was read books. My parents moved around a lot, and I just collected books. And every birthday and Christmas, I was just given book tokens. And in those days, which was 100 years ago, they cost £2 for a proper chapter book, and I would get £150 in book tokens for Christmas, and I could go out and stay in the bookshop and choose hundreds of books.
Yeah.
And every time we moved, my books had to go into a special box and they weren't allowed to be touched. And still at home, they're in the right way on the shelf as they've always been in layers. I mean, it was just everything to do with my childhood, I think. Everything I think about, all my memories are all tied up with what I read. And it's lovely going back now and rereading them and revisiting that through other children, and then reading new books and sort of feeling those feelings again that you don't really get. So you can get from adult books, but I think there's something very, very special about children's books.
Oh, especially if they're written about magic or anything, unreal. So we've been getting lots and lots of messages in for people about what their favourite children's books are. Have a listen to this.
We're going on a bear hunt.
My Family and Other Animals by Gerald Durrell.
Just William by Richmal Crompton.
Famous Five and Secret Seven, love that.
Enid Blyton's books.
James and the Giant Peach by Roald Dahl.
The Gruffalo, Julia Donaldson.
James and the Giant Peach.
Lord of the Flies.
I love it. You might recognise some of the radio voices there. Did you hear Malcolm Taylor?
Maybe Chris McCarty at
Maybe
the end.
Chris McCarty at the end.
Is Lord of the Flies that children's book? Is that a debate for another day?
We've got a school librarian in the room.
Definitely.
I like it. But yeah, loads of messages coming in as well. The Secret Garden getting a shout out, and also someone to get in touch saying check out the Big Bad Wolf book sale in Dubai Studio City. It's open on until the 20th, open 24 hours. This texter says got great non-fiction and children's books for between 11 and 18 dirhams, including some great titles.
I went there last year. It's open 24 hours, literally. You've got to be a major bookworm to go there in the middle of the night. But I had a fantastic time there. We've also had Bob from Abu Dhabi. He has been in touch.
I'm a grandfather of 9, and I enjoy when we get together as a family. I will often put the kids to bed with a story or a reading from a book. And the last couple that I read to them was the Big Friendly Giant by Roald Dahl and the Mouse and the Motorcycle books from Beverly Cleary. But then I've also read them books from my youth. One was called the Mad Scientist Club, and in the U.S. they had this thing called Scholastic Readers, and you would go to the library in the school and you had an opportunity to buy some books, and then they would come to you in a few weeks. And I remember getting this Mad Scientist Club book at one of those, and I just loved it because it was a group of young boys that were my age, and they liked to get in a little bit of mischief like boys do, and the grandchildren love hearing their little short stories. And then the other one, I guess maybe that started my travel bug in my life, and that was the Paddle to the Sea, and it's about an American Indian boy or a Canadian Indian boy that carves a little Indian figure in a canoe and sets him at the headwaters of a river, and off he goes on his journey around the Great Lakes and eventually other parts of the world. It's just fun to share that travel venture and adventure part of my life and part of Paddle to the Sea's life with grandchildren.
Paddle to the Sea was read to me by my great-grandmother, who is Canadian, and it's set. He goes in Canada, this little boat, and it's just been republished, and I bought it two years ago, and it's amazing rereading the book that I had read with my great-grandmother. It's a magical book. I highly recommend it. You can buy it. I mean, it's now in print, so it's just glorious, and this little canoe goes all the way through the Great Lakes of Canada. It's a wonderful book.
Mary Rose, Librarian of the Year, what do you think about what stage children should be reading?
Yeah, well, it's difficult for me because I am not a teacher, so I'm not charged with teaching them the skill of reading. I'm more about the will and the pleasure. So I shy away as much as I can from prescribing lists and saying if they're at this stage they should be reading this. I know people like to have an idea and be shown ways to go, but I think really it's about just getting lots of stuff in front of them. Listening to audio books is a brilliant way to introduce children to things that they might not yet be ready to read themselves. So my 2 children have gone through the whole Harry Potter audiobook. They couldn't read the books, but just listening to the words and understanding that there's a whole story world out there that they can get from lots of different ways is important. And I think it will come. They will be able to read, and it will happen. And
it's a bit like they say that there isn't, there's never a stage where someone goes, "Oh, that's Bob, my husband," and he crawls into the room. Yeah. Eventually, all children do learn how to walk.
Yes, and they will stop crawling into your bed in the middle of the night.
They won't. That is a fantasy.
So it will come, and I think we all have different stages of when we want to read something, and we all feel like reading something really awful, a real trashy novel when you're on the beach or in the plane, and then you want to read a classic. And I think it's the same with children, that there isn't a progression to this great pinnacle of brilliance. You're not walking up to Shakespeare. There's a huge mountainous and landscape of books that you can pick up, picture books, all sorts of things. So we're not on an upward trajectory at this point. I think it's just lots of things, and it's okay to read anything as long as you're picking it up and responding to it with your heart and feeling it, rather than just the skill of saying, I can read this word. It's what it means to you and how it makes you feel, and that can come from anything, I think.
I know that you're a librarian a school librarian, and we're very lucky with the schools out here that they're often very well funded, so there's great libraries. But how about the public libraries in the UAE? Malar Balaji from Booktopia, I know you work closely with libraries here. Are there children's libraries?
Yes. Now, there are 7 libraries in Dubai. So all the libraries have an amazing infrastructure. They have beautiful reading rooms. There's a lot of activities that happen every week in the library. The library memberships are very cheap. So I think you get something around 200 or 75 dirham for children for your entire life. You just get
really?
Yes, it's very cheap. It's something less than 200. So I do not know the exact amount now, but it is very cheap. The infrastructure of the libraries are amazing. The children library section is separate. It is in the same building, but then it's just a different section. There's a lot of Arabic books because it is a region. It is United Arab Emirates, and there's also books in English, in French, and other languages too.
Wow, I had no idea that this resource even existed.
Yes, and the workshops are conducted regularly every week. So all you have to do is drop in to the closest library next to you, enroll yourself, and they send you WhatsApp updates, Facebook updates, and Instagram updates.
Okay, I'm going to go and look them up right now. I'm going to Google libraries UAE. We're getting loads of messages, people writing in and telling us what their favourite children's books are. Please join them. We're loving getting everyone's ideas. I'm adding to my list. Nice message here saying Calvin and Hobbes, and then lots of people saying that they like Enid Blyton as well, which is always one of my favourite. The Faraway Tree. Gosh, that was a magical book. And I just remember the drinks. In fact, nearly all the time whenever I read books, and they make me feel hungry. Do books make you feel hungry? Books make me feel hungry.
There's a wonderful book called The Little Library Cafe book, and this amazing author, she was at the Lit Fest, and she has made a whole recipe book with recipes from books and children's books and adult books.
Oh, wow.
She's just about to produce another one. It's amazing. So you can eat
the food that you'd read.
The food that you're reading about. It's wonderful.
Amazing.
It's a wonderful book.
Fantastic guest in the studio with me. I'm going to ask the ultimate question. If you are looking to build up your collection, who are the best authors for children of a certain age? And just to show you how much prep we do here, I have got Geneva to do the youngest children. Mala is doing kids in the middle from 6 to 8, and Mary Rose is going to do the 8 and overs. So Geneva, what are the very best books for children who are just starting out with their reading?
Absolutely. I think that Eric Carle does some great books. They've got wonderful pictures. He does the Brown Bear books. Also, Julia Donaldson, if there's any parents who haven't heard of Julia Donaldson yet, definitely look for her. She has a fun use of words in her books. And more traditionally, Margaret Wise Brown, who wrote Goodnight Moon, she has some other fantastic books, and I really recommend those.
Oh, wow. Definitely some for me to add to my collection there. Mala, also my son is 6, so I'm going to be making notes now.
Yes. So 6 to 8 is actually a very tricky age. It's just 2 years, but we are addressing to a huge audience is because we call this stage emerging readers or early readers. There are children who already started reading by themselves, and there's children who are just learning to read by themselves. So I always tell parents, this is the age group where you experiment. So luckily for this age group, we have lovely authors, Roald Dahl, hands down, Jacqueline Wilson, Jeff Kinney, Michael Morpurgo. There are Rainbow Magic books. Also this is the only category where you can experiment with illustrations. So there's still babies who love Julia Donaldson and Eric Carle, but Julia Donaldson also has chapter books. So when you go to your school library or to a bookseller, ask them for early chapter books. So, which Roald Dahl's books also come with illustration. Harry Potter comes with illustration. So if your child loves Harry Potter movies, you can still give them a Harry Potter book, but give them a Harry Potter with illustration. So it's just got 1 paragraph or 2 paragraphs in a page and big pictures, colorful. So the child is just going to get more interested.
Mary Rose, you've got the difficult 8 and overs.
Oh, no, not difficult.
Oh.
There's so many. I don't know where to begin. I think I'll just read out lots of authors. Lots of these ones are ones that have been going. We've all heard of Roald Dahl and Michael Morpurgo, but actually now there are some really, really good new authors, or perhaps ones that you might not have come across yourself. So Hilary Mackay has.
What I love is you've got books in front of you.
I brought them. I
brought them in.
Ran down the library grabbing books. Hilary Mackay, Catherine Rundell, who writes absolutely beautifully for children, and she has a very small little essay called Why You Should Read Children's Books Even Though You Are So Old and Wise, which I think all adults should read. Anything by Catherine Rundell is fabulous. Kieran Millwood Hargrave, Maz Evans, M.G. Leonard and her Beetle Boy books, Robin Stevens. We have girls in year 5 at school who read Robin Stevens all the time. Wonderful murder detective stories. They love them. I could go on and on.
I know, I've got to stop you. Sadly, we're running out of time. For all of my audience, for all of my panel of guests, tell me, because we've been teasing everyone for ages, what are your favourite children's books of all time? I'm going to start with Geneva.
I loved reading The Babysitter's Club.
Ah, fantastic. Favourite children's book?
Such a difficult question. Little Women, Little Men and Joe's Boys. Louisa May Alcott.
Okay, and Mary Rose.
I want to say something new, but I'm going to have to say what I loved when I was young. It's called The Painted Garden by Noel Streatfeild.
So for me, it was, my favourite book was another one was The Little White Horse by Elizabeth Goudge.
Yeah.
Magical book, especially for girls who like unicorns. I'm telling you, you've got to get that into their library. Thank you so much for joining me, all 3 guests.
Thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
This is Dubai Eye 103.8.